Hi, I'm Renee. I am a spiritual guide, an intuitive, a mystic, and a writer, and I live in the lovely Provence, France. Today, I want to talk about understanding versus knowing what we understand and what we know. And this dropped in for me last Thursday morning. I was reviewing some material for a shaman call that I had, and I ran across this quote from Theun Mares in his book called "The Aphorisms of Theun Mares," and um, the quote goes like this: "A warrior knows from experience that knowledge is an inner knowing that overtakes him, completely absorbs him in the moment, and then mysteriously subsides." And when I ran across those words, it was like being transported back in time. My my guides, my soul, how I relate to this situation would be that my soul transported me back in time to an event that happened to me in January. And so today I want to talk about in the provincial winds. um, have you ever had a moment where you just knew something? Not understood it, not figured it out. You just knew it completely in your body before your mind had a chance to even think about it. I always refer to those moments as knowing something in my bones because that's what it feels like for me. There's this depth and intensity to this knowing. And and I'm going to try to keep my hair out of my face. So as I read that quote, I was transported back to that moment in January, this moment where I was negotiating a contract with a client, and they really wanted to negotiate my rate lower, and they had all their reasons for that, and totally understand those reasons. But in the past, this kind of situation would have just shaken me to my core. I would have been fearful of losing the work. I would have been fearful that I was being too much. I just, like, all of these situations in the past were just full of this intense fear. And yet this time was different. And remember, if you aren't familiar with these last few videos, as I've begun to talk about my powerful year, my word for this year is powerful. And I am sitting this year in this place of really wanting to live from a place of being in my power in all areas of my life all year long. So this phrase took me back to this moment when I was preparing for this negotiation, and I just had this knowing that I was not going to move on my rate. We could negotiate the work. We could do less work. We could have fewer hours, whatever that was, but we were not going to negotiate my value, because the rate isn't about the money. It's about how I see my value, how I saw my value. But most importantly, for the message here today, I just had this knowing that that was my value, and it was worth standing up for. And if I would have budged on it, it felt in my body like it would have been a betrayal of myself, and I was no longer willing to do that. So I had this deep moment of just knowing in my bones that I was going to stand. My rate was my rate. My value was my value. We could negotiate the work, but that we could not negotiate my value. And I didn't know if it would work out. I didn't know if the work might go away. I didn't know. But I just had this felt sense of it. So when I read that quote by Theun Mares the other day, and I was transported to that moment, suddenly I understood where that depth of that knowing came from. I didn't understand it at the time. I was just like, well, this feels like it's really solid. I'm going to rely on it. But now that I've read the quote, I understand what I couldn't get before. Um, why I felt so sure about something that in the past had always paralyzed me with fear. But this time I just knew, and I trusted that knowing. It was in my bones. It was in my bones. Understanding in the mind, understanding is the mind comprehending. It's the comprehension of the mind, is how I want to put it. Knowing is in the body. Knowing is a felt sense. It's a remembering of what the soul already knows to be true. That's why it's such a felt thing. It's a really deep, it's just a deep knowing. So I think for me, the way I'm processing this is that this is about learning to trust my knowing over the understanding of my mind, to stop seeking more information from out there and start to listen more about the deep knowing that I already carry. My intuition, yes, but I feel like the word intuition describes the language of it, but the knowing sits in the depth of the felt sense of it. That makes sense. So these are the questions that I want to leave you with today. Questions that I'm sitting with as I think about this deeper felt sense of knowing. Where in your life are you seeking more understanding when you already have a knowing deep in your gut, deep in your bones? Where are you seeking outside understanding, outside validation, perhaps even, when you actually already have a felt sense of what the answer is for you? What would you change if you trusted what lives in your bones? What would you change if you trusted what lives in your bones? What is your body trying to tell you that your mind keeps overriding? The little hamster wheel that spins around up in our minds it often is trying to override that felt sense that we have in our body. So what is your body trying to tell you that little hamster wheel mind is trying to override? These are the questions that I'm sitting with in my practice on a daily basis as I have this grand adventure with living in my power this year, and how I am getting back in touch with a deep remembering of the knowing that lives in my bones. I'll leave it there today. I hope this finds you truly well. And yeah, a biento.